6-year-old Owen Patel clutched his bright red toy briefcase as laughter echoed through the gleaming convention center. The suited executives towered above him, their mockery cutting through the air like glass. But when billionaire CEO Gabrielle Shaw stepped forward and asked what was inside that little briefcase, nobody expected the answer that would silence an entire room and change everything forever. What Owen revealed wasn't just drawings. It was a dream so powerful it would move mountains and touch millions of hearts. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of the Metropolitan Convention Center as Owen Patel pressed his small face against the towering glass windows. His breath fogged the pristine surface as he gazed up at the enormous banner stretched across the building's facade, reading International Business Innovation Expo in bold letters that seemed to stretch endlessly across the sky. The 6-year-old boy adjusted his grip on his most prized possession, a bright red plastic briefcase that had once belonged to his older sister Priya, complete with tiny combination locks that clicked satisfyingly when turned. The briefcase had been Priya's 8th birthday present, a gift she had treasured during her final years when she spent countless hours in hospital beds, filling its compartments with architectural sketches and building plans that reflected her dream of becoming an architect who would design beautiful spaces for everyone to enjoy. Now, 2 years after her death from leukemia, the briefcase had become Owen's most sacred possession, a tangible connection to the sister who had shaped his understanding of the world and instilled in him a passion for creating something meaningful and lasting. Owen's mother, Mira Patel, knelt beside him and smoothed down his carefully combed black hair, her weathered hands trembling slightly as she adjusted his tie for the 3rd time that morning. She had spent the previous evening pressing his white button-down shirt and navy blue slacks, wanting him to look professional for what might be the most important day of his young life. The outfit made him appear like a miniature businessman, though the effect was somewhat diminished by the superhero band-aids visible on his knees from a recent playground accident. "Remember what we talked about, Beta," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion she was trying hard to conceal. "Today is very important. Priya would be so proud of you for being brave enough to try this." Her dark eyes glistened as she mentioned her daughter's name, the loss still fresh even 2 years after the accident that had taken their bright, creative girl who had dreamed of transforming the world one building at a time. Mira had worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria for 3 months to save enough money for their bus tickets and the day's expenses, sacrificing her own needs to give Owen this chance to share his vision with the business world. The convention center buzzed with activity as hundreds of entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders streamed through the main entrance like a river of ambition and expensive fabric. Men and women in tailored suits that cost more than Mira's monthly salary carried leather portfolios worth more than most people's rent payments, speaking rapidly into wireless earphones about market opportunities, profit margins. Their conversations filled the air with terms like market disruption, scalable solutions, and paradigm shifts, creating a linguistic landscape that might as well have been a foreign language to the Patel family. The architecture of the convention center itself seemed designed to intimidate, with soaring ceilings that made even tall adults feel small and polished surfaces that reflected the constant movement of important people conducting important business. Massive video screens displayed rotating presentations from the day's featured speakers, their faces blown up to heroic proportions as they promised to reveal the secrets of entrepreneurial success to anyone willing to pay the substantial admission fees. Owen clutched his briefcase tighter as they approached the registration desk, where a harried-looking woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes glanced down at them with barely concealed confusion. Her nameplate read, Jennifer Morrison, Event Coordinator, and her clipboard held a list of registered attendees that included some of the most recognizable names in business and technology. The sight of a 6-year-old boy with a toy briefcase clearly did not match any category in her mental database of appropriate expo attendees. "Excuse me," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with condescension as she looked from Owen to Mira and back again. "But this is a professional business expo with a minimum age requirement of 16. Are you perhaps lost? The Children's Activity Center is downtown at the community college, and I believe they're having some sort of science fair today that might be more appropriate for someone his age." Her eyes lingered on Owen's toy briefcase with obvious disdain, as if the bright red plastic was somehow offensive in this temple of corporate sophistication where everything was black, silver, or navy blue. Mira straightened her shoulders and pulled out a crumpled printout from her worn leather purse, the paper showing evidence of having been folded and refolded countless times as she had studied the expo's guidelines and requirements over the past several weeks. "My son Owen has something very important to present to the business community," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly under the woman's withering stare. "We read online that this expo welcomes innovative ideas from all sources, regardless of age or background. The website specifically states that groundbreaking innovation can come from anywhere, and Owen has been working on his presentation for months." Jennifer rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath about helicopter parents and participation trophy culture before reluctantly consulting her computer screen. After several minutes of typing and clicking, during which Owen shifted nervously from foot to foot while other attendees formed an impatient line behind them, she finally printed out 2 visitor badges that felt almost comically large hanging around Owen's small neck and his mother's shoulder. "These are day passes only," Jennifer said with obvious reluctance, as if she were bestowing an enormous favor upon them. "You'll have access to the main exhibition floor, but not to the VIP networking events or the private presentation rooms. And please keep in mind that this keen is a professional environment where serious business is being conducted. We expect all attendees to behave appropriately and not disrupt the proceedings." End quote. As they entered the main exhibition hall, Owen's eyes widened in wonder at the sheer scale of the event, his neck craning back as he tried to take in the full scope of the cavernous space. The hall stretched out like an airplane hangar, filled with elaborate booth displays featuring interactive screens, holographic presentations, and sleek product demonstrations that looked like something from a wine-bad fry science fiction movie. The ceiling soared high above them, decorated with hanging banners representing companies from around the world, their logos creating a colorful canopy of corporate ambition. Thousands of people moved through the space like a human river, their conversations creating a constant hum of activity that reminded Owen of the busy marketplace his grandmother had once taken him to in Mumbai. During a rare family visit, the sensory overload was almost overwhelming, with electronic music from various booths blending together into a cacophonous soundtrack of modern commerce, punctuated by the occasional chime of cash registers and the clicking of high heels on marble floors. The first booth they approached belonged to a fintech startup whose founders were young men in designer jeans and expensive sneakers, their casual attire a calculated statement about their company's innovative approach to traditional banking. Their presentation boards were covered with colorful graphs showing exponential growth curves and market penetration statistics. That painted a picture of unlimited potential for anyone wise enough to invest in their revolutionary payment processing platform. When Owen stepped forward with his briefcase, trying to get their attention by clearing his throat politely as his mother had taught him, one of the founders glanced down and chuckled to his partner. "Hey, Marcus! Looks like someone's playing dress-up today," he said loud enough for several nearby visitors to hear, his voice carrying the kind of casual cruelty that seemed to come naturally to people who had never experienced real hardship. "What's in the briefcase, kid? Monopoly money? Maybe some Pokemon cards you want to trade?" The men laughed at their own wit, while Owen's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but he held his ground, remembering his mother's words about being brave like Priya had been during her illness. His sister had faced down doctors, nurses, and medical procedures that would have terrified most adults, always maintaining her dignity and her dreams, even when her small body was failing her. If Priya could be brave in the face of death, Owen reasoned, he could certainly be brave in the face of a few mean adults. "I have drawings for a playground," Owen said quietly, his voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the exhibition hall. "It's going to help kids in my neighborhood have somewhere safe to play." The fintech founders exchanged another amused glance, their expressions making it clear that they found Owen's earnestness more entertaining than touching. "That's really sweet, kid," Marcus said with exaggerated patience, the kind of tone adults used when they were humoring children they considered to be wasting their time. "But we're kind of busy here talking to real investors about real money. Maybe you should find your mom and let the grown-ups handle the business stuff, okay?" He turned back to his presentation without another glance at Owen, effectively dismissing him as if he were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. As the morning progressed, the pattern repeated itself at booth after booth with soul-crushing consistency. At a renewable energy company's display, a woman in a power suit that probably cost more than Owen's family spent on groceries in 3 months looked down her nose at him and suggested he might be more interested in the junior entrepreneur activities at the local elementary school. Her voice carried the kind of educated condescension that made it clear she considered herself far too important to waste time on children's fantasies. A group of venture capitalists gathered around a high-top table actually pointed and laughed when Owen tried to approach their informal meeting area, with one man in an expensive watch joking that they should start accepting business proposals written in crayon. "Next thing you know," he said to his colleagues while gesturing dismissively at Owen, "we'll have kindergartners pitching us their lemonade stand business plans and asking for seed funding." Each rejection stung more than the last, accumulating like small wounds that gradually wore down Owen's confidence and determination. The bright enthusiasm he had felt that morning began to dim as he encountered adult after adult who seemed incapable of taking him seriously, their dismissiveness cutting deeper because he had expected the business world to be different from the playground bullies he had encountered at school. The whispers and snickers followed them wherever they went, creating a constant background soundtrack of mockery that made Owen feel as if he were on display as some sort of curiosity rather than a fellow human being with something valuable to contribute. "Can you believe that mother brought her kid here with a toy briefcase? This isn't bring your child to work day, honey. Security should really do something about this disruption. Some people have no sense of appropriate behavior." Owen felt his confidence crumbling with each dismissive glance and cruel comment, but every time he considered giving up and asking his mother to take him home, he thought about Priya and the promise he had made to her memory during those long nights when he sat alone in their shared bedroom, working on his drawings by the light of his desk lamp. He remembered her voice encouraging him to never give up on his dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed, or how many people told him he was too young or too small to make a difference. The memory of Priya was so vivid he could almost feel her presence beside him, her hand on his shoulder as she had done so many times when he was struggling with a difficult math problem or feeling sad about something that happened at school. She had possessed an almost supernatural ability to make him feel capable of anything, as if her belief in him could somehow make up for all the doubt and negativity in the rest of the world. By noon, Owen's small shoulders were sagging with defeat, and tears threatened to spill from his dark eyes as he realized that perhaps the adults were right and he was just a little boy with silly dreams that had no place in the serious world of business and money. They had been turned away from nearly 24 booths and presentations, with most people refusing to even listen to what he had to say. Their dismissal so swift and complete that he began to wonder if there was something fundamentally wrong with him or his ideas. Mira knelt beside her son in a quiet corner near the food court, her own heart breaking as she watched his spirit crumble under the weight of constant rejection. She had seen this same look on Priya's face during the worst days of her illness, when the treatments weren't working and the doctors had run out of hopeful things to say. The similarity was almost more than she could bear, and she had to fight back her own tears as she stroked Owen's hair with gentle fingers. "Maybe we should go home, Beta," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she considered the long bus ride back to their small apartment where Owen could retreat to his room and try to forget about this day of broken dreams. "You tried so hard, and Priya knows how brave you were today. Sometimes the world isn't ready for the beautiful things we want to create, but that doesn't mean they're not worth creating." But Owen shook his head stubbornly, his small jaw set with determination that reminded Mira powerfully of her late daughter during her most defiant moments. Even when the cancer was winning and her body was failing, Priya had refused to give up on her dreams of becoming an architect, spending her final weeks sketching buildings and playgrounds that she would never live to see constructed. That same fierce refusal to surrender burned in Owen's eyes as he clutched his briefcase tighter. "Priya said that good ideas sometimes have to wait for the right person to hear them," Owen said quietly, his voice steady despite the tears that had begun to track down his cheeks. "She said that there are people in the world who understand why beautiful spaces matter, but you have to keep looking until you find them. Maybe I just haven't found the right person yet." The afternoon brought a new wave of humiliation when Owen accidentally bumped into a group of tech executives while trying to navigate the crowded aisles between booth displays. His briefcase, which he had been holding at an awkward angle to avoid hitting anyone with it, flew open upon impact with someone's leg, scattering his carefully organized papers across the polished floor like pain. Oversized confetti. The executives, engaged in an animated discussion about market share and user acquisition costs, barely paused to acknowledge the collision. Their expensive leather shoes stepped carelessly around and occasionally on the scattered sheets as Owen scrambled to collect his precious work, his face burning with shame as hundreds of people walked past without offering to help. Some even seemed annoyed by the minor disruption to their important conversations, as if Owen's accident was a personal affront to their valuable time. "Next time, stick to the playground, kid." One of them called over his shoulder as the group walked away, leaving Owen on his hands and knees gathering his drawings while the constant stream of convention attendees flowed around him as if he were invisible. The comment cut particularly deep because it touched on Owen's greatest fear, that his playground project was nothing more than a childish fantasy that had no place in the adult world of real problems and real solutions. It was at that moment, as Owen knelt on the cold marble floor with tears finally spilling freely down his cheeks while his mother tried to help him collect the scattered papers, that a pair of elegant black heels appeared in his field of vision. He looked up through his tears to see a woman in her early 40s with striking silver-streaked hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon, wearing a tailored charcoal gray suit that spoke of both power and understated elegance. Her dark eyes held a warmth that was completely different from the cold dismissal he had encountered all day, and when she smiled, tiny lines crinkled at the corners of her eyes in a way that spoke of genuine kindness rather than the plastic smiles he had grown accustomed to from the other convention attendees. There was something in her expression that reminded Owen of his grandmother, a quality of patient attention that suggested she actually saw him as a person rather than an inconvenience. "Here, let me help you with that," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Owen couldn't quite place, but that sounded musical and warm. She knelt gracefully despite her expensive suit, her movements careful and deliberate as she began gathering his scattered drawings with the kind of reverence usually reserved for precious artifacts. As she handed each paper back to him, her eyes lingered on the colorful sketches and detailed plans, her expression growing more intrigued with each page she examined. "These are quite remarkable," she said softly, studying a particularly detailed drawing of a playground structure that incorporated multiple levels of play equipment with carefully designed accessibility features. "Did you create all of these yourself? The attention to detail is extraordinary, and the integration of inclusive design elements shows a level of thoughtfulness that I rarely see even in professional architectural presentations." Owen nodded shyly, suddenly feeling self-conscious under her genuine attention after hours of dismissal and mockery. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered, his small voice barely audible above the convention center's ambient noise of electronic music and overlapping conversations. "I've been working on them for a really long time. My sister Priya was teaching me about architecture before she—" His voice trailed off as the familiar pain of loss tightened in his chest, making it difficult to breathe normally. The woman's expression softened even further as she seemed to understand without him having to explain the shadow that crossed his young face. She had the kind of intuitive emotional intelligence that allowed her to read between the lines of what Owen was trying to say, recognizing the grief that underlay his determination and the love that motivated his project. "My name is Gabrielle Shaw," she said, extending her hand to Owen as if he were a fellow business professional rather than a 6-year-old boy with a toy briefcase. "I'm very interested in hearing about your project. Would you mind if we found somewhere quiet where you could tell me more about these drawings? I have a feeling that what you've created here is something very special indeed." Owen's eyes widened in recognition of the name, though he wasn't entirely sure why it seemed familiar until his mother gasped audibly from where she had been watching the interaction. Mira hurried over, her face a mixture of disbelief and hope as she realized who was taking such genuine interest in her son's work. Gabrielle Shaw was not just any businesswoman attending the expo. She was the founder and CEO of Shaw Enterprises, a multinational corporation worth over $12 billion that had started as a small construction company in her father's garage and grown into one of the world's most influential development firms. Her company had built skyscrapers in major cities around the globe, designed sustainable housing communities that had won international awards, and pioneered innovative approaches to urban planning that balanced economic development with environmental responsibility. Her face had graced the covers of Fortune, Forbes, and Time magazines more times than most celebrities, and she was regularly cited as one of the most powerful women in business, someone whose decisions could affect entire industries and whose investments could make or break emerging companies. Despite her immense success and influence, she was known throughout the business world for her philanthropic work and her commitment to supporting innovative projects that made a positive impact on communities around the world. "Mrs. Shaw," Mira stammered, her voice barely controlled as she approached the woman whose net worth probably exceeded the GDP of some small countries. "I'm Owen's mother, Mira Patel. I can't believe you're taking the time to speak with us. Everyone else has just laughed at him all day, treating him like he's nothing more than a distraction from their important business." Her voice cracked with emotion as she watched her son's face light up with the first genuine interest he had received since they had arrived at the expo many hours earlier. Gabrielle's expression darkened slightly as she processed Mira's words, her jaw tightening in a way that her business competitors would have recognized as a sign of barely controlled anger. "They laughed at him?" she asked, her voice taking on a steely edge that suggested she was not someone to be trifled with when her sense of justice was aroused. A 6-year-old boy with architectural drawings that demonstrate more social consciousness than most urban planning departments gets laughed at by people who probably couldn't sketch a stick figure if their profit margins depended on it? She shook her head in disgust at the behavior Owen had endured, her own memories of being dismissed and underestimated early in her career fueling her outrage at how he had been treated. She remembered being the only woman in board meetings full of men who thought her ideas were cute but not worth serious consideration, and the parallel between her experiences and Owen's treatment stirred something protective and fierce in her chest. "Well," she said, turning back to Owen with a warm smile that chased away the momentary storm clouds in her expression. "Their loss is certainly my gain. I have a feeling that what you're about to show me will be far more valuable than anything else I've seen at this entire expo. Shall we find a place where we can talk properly about your project?" They found a quiet seating area away from the main exhibition floor, where Gabrielle sat across from Owen and gave him her complete attention in a way that made him feel as if he were the most important person in the entire BA. Convention Center. She listened intently as he carefully opened his briefcase and began laying out his drawings on the low table between them, his small hands trembling slightly with nervous excitement as he prepared to share his most important work with someone who might actually understand its significance. The briefcase's interior was meticulously organized, with different sections for various aspects of his project. Owen had created dividers from cardboard and decorated them with drawings of playground equipment, keeping his materials sorted in a way that would have impressed any professional project manager. As he arranged his papers, Gabrielle could see that this was not the work of a child playing at being an adult, but rather the product of genuine passion and careful planning. "This is the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground," he began, his voice growing stronger and more confident as he pointed to his most detailed drawing. The sketch showed an elaborate playground structure with multiple levels, climbing walls, slides, swings, and innovative play equipment that seemed to blend seamlessly with natural landscaping elements like trees, gardens, and water features. The drawing demonstrated an intuitive understanding of how children actually played, with sightlines that would allow parents to supervise from multiple vantage points and equipment that encouraged both individual exploration and group activities. Every element seemed purposefully placed to create opportunities for different types of play, while maintaining a cohesive overall design that was both beautiful and functional. "I designed it for kids who don't have anywhere safe to play," Owen continued, his presentation becoming more animated as he warmed to his subject. "Especially kids whose families don't have much money and can't drive to the fancy playgrounds in other neighborhoods. Priya always said that everyone deserves beautiful spaces, not just rich people. She said that good architecture should make life better for everyone, not just the people who can afford to pay for it." End quote. Gabrielle leaned forward, studying the drawings with the same intensity she might apply to reviewing architectural plans for a $100 million skyscraper development. Owen's sketches, while clearly the work of a child in terms of artistic technique, showed an intuitive understanding of space, flow, accessibility, and community needs that impressed her more than many professional presentations she had seen from architects with decades of experience. The playground design incorporated elements that demonstrated remarkable forethought and social awareness, from wheelchair-accessible ramps and modified equipment to quiet spaces for children who might be overwhelmed by too much stimulation. Owen had even included areas specifically designed for different age groups, ensuring that toddlers wouldn't be endangered by older children's more vigorous play, while still creating opportunities for siblings of different ages to interact safely. "Tell me about these accessibility features," Gabrielle said, pointing to the carefully drawn ramps and modified equipment that appeared throughout the design. "How did you know to include these elements? Most playground designers don't think about accessibility until they're required to by building codes, but you've integrated these features as if they were always part of your original vision." Owen's face brightened with enthusiasm as he launched into an explanation that revealed the depth of research and personal experience behind his design choices. "I learned about it when Priya was in the hospital," he said earnestly, his small hands gesturing to different parts of the drawing as he spoke. "There was this girl named Maya who was in the room next to us, and she used a wheelchair because her legs didn't work the same way as other kids' legs." He paused for a moment, his expression becoming more serious as he remembered those difficult days in the pediatric ward where he had spent so much time while his sister underwent treatments. "Maya told me that most playgrounds weren't built for kids like her, that she could only use maybe one or two things while her friends got to play on everything else. She said it made her feel left out and different, like the people who built the playground didn't think kids in wheelchairs were important enough to think about." The memory of Maya's words had clearly made a profound impact on Owen, shaping his understanding of how design choices could either include or exclude people from full participation in community life. So I made sure everything in my playground could be used by all kinds of kids, he continued, pointing to various features he had incorporated. Kids who use wheelchairs or crutches, or have trouble seeing or hearing. Priya said that good design includes everyone, not just some people, and that architects who don't think about accessibility aren't really solving problems, they're just making things pretty for people who are already lucky. End quote. As Owen continued his presentation, more details of his tragic backstory emerged in fragments that painted a picture of loss, resilience, and determination that moved Gabrielle more than any business proposal she had ever heard. Priya had been 8 years old when she was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a diagnosis that had turned their family's world upside down and thrust them into a medical odyssey that would consume the final 2 years of her short life. During her treatments, which involved months of chemotherapy, radiation, and experimental procedures that were as brutal as the disease itself, Priya had maintained her dream of becoming an architect who would design beautiful buildings for everyone to enjoy. She had turned their shared hospital room into an impromptu classroom where she taught Owen everything she learned about design and architecture. From the books their mother brought from the library and the educational websites they accessed on the hospital's limited internet connection. Priya was really smart, Owen said with obvious pride in his sister's intelligence and determination. Even when she was really sick and the medicine made her feel terrible, she kept studying and drawing and planning. She said that even if she couldn't become an architect herself, she could teach me everything she learned so that her dreams could still come true through my work. The depth of love and dedication behind Owen's project became even more apparent as he described how Priya had used her remaining time to ensure that her architectural knowledge and social consciousness would live on through her younger brother. Despite her own suffering, she had focused on preparing Owen to carry forward her vision of inclusive design that prioritized community needs over profit margins. "The playground has to be in our neighborhood," Owen explained, showing Gabrielle a hand-drawn map of the area where they lived that demonstrated impressive attention to demographic and geographic detail. "There's this empty lot where all the kids play, but it's not safe. There's broken glass and rusty metal everywhere. And Mrs. Rodriguez's little boy Miguel cut his foot really bad last month when he stepped on a piece of an old car that someone dumped there." The map showed a community predominantly composed of immigrant families, single parents working multiple jobs, and elderly residents on fixed incomes, people for whom transportation to distant playgrounds was a significant barrier. Owen had somehow managed to gather and document information about bus routes, walking distances, and safety concerns that would have impressed professional urban planners. "The city says they don't have money to clean it up or build anything there," Owen continued, his voice taking on a note of frustration at the bureaucratic obstacles he had encountered. "But Priya always said that if you want something badly enough, you have to find a way to make it happen yourself. She said that the best architects don't wait for permission to make the world better. They figure out how to do it and then make it happen." Gabrielle studied the site map with the same careful attention she gave to feasibility studies for major development projects, noting the careful documentation of community resources, transportation access, and existing infrastructure. Owen's research showed a genuine understanding of the factors that would affect the playground's success, from maintenance considerations to community ownership of the space. "Where did you learn to do this kind of community research?" Gabrielle asked, genuinely curious about how a 6-year-old had managed to compile such comprehensive information about playground access and neighborhood demographics. "This level of analysis is something I would expect from graduate students in urban planning, not from someone who should be more concerned with cartoons and video games." Owen's cheeks flushed with pride as he explained how Priya had taught him to observe and document the world around them, turning their walks through the neighborhood into lessons about architecture, urban planning, and social responsibility. Even during her illness, when she was often too weak for extended outings, She had trained Owen to be her eyes and ears in the community, sending him on carefully planned missions to gather information about how spaces were used and what problems needed solving. Priya said that the best buildings solve problems for real people, Owen recited, clearly quoting his sister's words with the kind of reverence reserved for sacred texts. She made me practice by walking around and looking for problems that needed solving, like how the bus stop doesn't have a roof so people get wet when it rains, or how the grocery store has steps that make it hard for people with wheelchairs to get inside, or how the park doesn't have good lighting so families don't feel safe there after dark. The systematic approach to identifying and documenting community needs reflected Priya's influence and her sophisticated understanding of how architecture could address social problems. She had taught Owen to see the built environment not as a collection of separate buildings and spaces, but as an interconnected system that either supported or hindered people's ability to live full and healthy lives. She said that architects who don't pay attention to problems like that aren't really architects, Owen continued, his voice carrying the conviction of someone much older than his 6 years. They're just people who draw pretty pictures for rich people. But real architects make life better for everyone, especially people who don't have much money or power to make things better for themselves. The wisdom embedded in Owen's presentation continued to astound Gabrielle as she realized she was listening to ideas that had been filtered through CRA. The perspective of a terminally ill 8-year-old who had possessed a remarkably mature understanding of social responsibility and inclusive design. Priya's influence permeated every aspect of Owen's proposal, from the thoughtful integration of play structures with natural elements to the careful consideration of maintenance costs and community ownership of the space. Owen pulled out another drawing that showed the playground in different seasons, with areas designed for winter activities like sledding and ice skating, and summer features like splash pads and shade structures that would make the space usable and enjoyable year-round. The seasonal adaptation showed a level of thinking that went far beyond typical playground design, considering how the space would serve the community's needs throughout the changing weather patterns of their geographic region. Priya helped me think about how the playground would look when it snowed, he explained, pointing to sketches of modified equipment that could accommodate winter play activities. She said that good playgrounds work in all kinds of weather, not just sunny days. Kids still need places to play when it's cold or rainy, so the design has to think about that from the beginning, not just add it later as an afterthought. The winter adaptations included covered areas where children could play during inclement weather, equipment designed to be safe and fun even when covered with snow, and sightlines that would remain clear even when trees lost their leaves. Owen had even considered how the playground surfaces would handle ice and snow, showing an understanding of safety considerations that demonstrated remarkable maturity. As Owen's presentation continued, a small crowd had begun to gather around their seating area, drawn by the unusual sight of a major CEO giving her undivided attention to a small boy with a toy briefcase. Some of the same people who had laughed at Owen earlier in the day now stood at a respectful distance, straining to hear what had captured Gabrielle Shaw's interest so completely and wondering if they had missed something important in their hasty dismissal of the child's proposal. The shift in atmosphere was palpable as word spread through the exhibition hall that something extraordinary was happening in the quiet corner near the food court. People began pulling out their phones to record the interaction, sensing that they might be witnessing something significant, though few of them could have predicted just how profound the moment would prove to be. Gabrielle noticed the growing audience, but chose to ignore them completely, keeping her focus entirely on Owen as he showed her his final drawing, a sketch of children playing together on the equipment he had designed. The picture included kids of different ages, abilities, and backgrounds, all engaged in various activities that showcased the playground's inclusive design philosophy. Some children were using wheelchairs, others had hearing aids or glasses, and several appeared to be from different ethnic backgrounds, reflecting the diversity of Owen's neighborhood. In the corner of the drawing, he had sketched two figures watching from a bench. a small boy and a slightly older girl who were clearly meant to represent himself and Priya. The girl in the drawing had the bald head that Priya had sported during her chemotherapy treatments, but she was smiling as she watched the children play on the equipment that represented the fulfillment of her architectural dreams. "This is beautiful, Owen," Gabrielle said softly, her voice thick with emotion as she studied the drawing that somehow managed to capture both profound loss and infinite hope in a few simple pencil strokes. "Your sister taught you well. This playground would be something truly special, a place where every child could feel welcome and included. Tell me, how much money do you think it would cost to build something like this?" Owen's face fell slightly as he admitted that he hadn't figured out the money part yet, explaining that his mother worked 2 jobs just to pay for their small apartment and food, leaving no room in their budget for playground construction materials or the kind of professional help that would be needed to turn his drawings into reality. The practical limitations of his family's financial situation had been a constant source of frustration as he worked on his designs, knowing that even the most perfect plans were worthless without the resources to implement them. "I was hoping that maybe some of the people here today would want to help," Owen said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper as he voiced the desperate hope that had motivated his mother to spend their savings on bus tickets to attend the expo. "Priya always said that there are good people in the world who want to help make things better. You just have to find them and show them why it matters. I thought maybe if I could show my drawings to the right person, they might understand how important this playground is for all the kids in our neighborhood." The simple honesty of Owen's admission hit Gabrielle like a physical blow, reminding her of her own childhood when her family had struggled to make ends meet and her father had worked multiple jobs to keep their small construction business afloat. She remembered the feeling of having big dreams that seemed impossible because of financial constraints, and the way those limitations had motivated her to work harder and smarter to create opportunities for herself. Others. Gabrielle felt her heart break and soar simultaneously as she listened to this remarkable child articulate his vision with such clarity and purpose. She had attended thousands of business presentations throughout her career, listened to pitches from Harvard MBAs and seasoned entrepreneurs seeking millions in funding for projects that promised to revolutionize entire industries, but none of them had moved her the way Owen's simple, heartfelt proposal had. His combination of genuine need identification, innovative solution design, and pure determination reminded her of why she had gotten into business in the first place. Before the complexities of corporate growth had sometimes obscured the fundamental purpose of creating value for communities. Looking at Owen's drawings, she saw not just a playground design, but a philosophy of inclusive development that could transform how her entire industry approached community projects. The crowd around them had grown larger, with people now openly recording the interaction on their phones as word spread throughout the convention center that something extraordinary was taking place. Business executives who had been dismissive of Owen earlier now pushed closer, trying to hear every word of his presentation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to embarrassment as they realized what they had missed in press. Their hasty judgments. "Owen," Gabrielle said, leaning forward and looking directly into his dark eyes with an intensity that made the rest of the world seem to fade away. "I want you to know that what you've shown me today is one of the most impressive presentations I've ever seen. Your research is thorough, your design is thoughtful and inclusive, and your passion for helping your community is exactly the kind of thinking that changes the world. You should be very proud of the work you've done here." End quote. The small boy's face lit up with joy at her words, but Gabrielle could see the question burning in his eyes. The hope mixed with fear that he was too young to articulate, but old enough to feel in every fiber of his being. He clutched his drawings as if they contained all his dreams for the future, which in many ways they did, representing months of work and the culmination of everything his sister had taught him about making the world a better place. She glanced at Mira, who had been listening to the entire presentation with tears streaming down her face, her hands pressed to her mouth as she watched her son's impossible dream being taken seriously by one of the most powerful people in the business world. The weight of the moment settled around them as Gabrielle realized that she held the power to transform this child's vision into reality with a single decision: to either validate his faith in the goodness of people or add another layer of disappointment to his young life. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity as hundreds of people waited to see what would happen next, their phones recording every second of an interaction that would soon be shared millions of times across social media platforms around the world. The convention center's ambient noise seemed to fade into background whispers as everyone present sensed they were witnessing something that transcended typical business transactions. "Owen," Gabrielle said finally, her voice steady and clear despite the emotion churning in her chest. "Shaw Enterprises would be honored to fund the construction of the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground. We'll work with the city to acquire the lot you've identified, and we'll build your playground exactly as you've designed it, with all the accessibility features and inclusive elements you've specified. This project will become a flagship example of community-centered design that will replicate in neighborhoods around the world." The silence that followed her announcement was profound and electric, as if the entire convention center had paused to absorb the magnitude of what had just occurred. Owen stared at her with wide eyes, his young mind struggling to process that his impossible dream was about to become reality, that the months of work and hope and determination had actually led to this moment of transformation. Mira gasped and covered her mouth with her hands, tears flowing freely as she realized her son's heartbreak was about to be transformed into something tangible and lasting. The other convention attendees began to murmur among themselves, their voices creating a wave of excitement that rippled outward through the exhibition hall as people tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. "But there's one condition," Gabrielle continued with a smile that held just a hint of mischief, causing Owen's expression to shift from pure joy to cautious attention. "You have to be our chief consultant on this project. That means you'll work with our architects and engineers to make sure the playground is built exactly right, and you'll be there for the grand opening to cut the ribbon and show all the neighborhood kids their new playground. Does that sound acceptable to you, Mr. Patel?" Owen nodded vigorously, his small body practically vibrating with excitement as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The playground that had existed only in his drawings and dreams was going to be real. Built with real materials by real construction workers, creating a real place where real children could play safely for years to come. Priya's dream of inclusive architecture was going to live on through his work, touching the lives of countless children who would never know her name but would benefit from her wisdom. The crowd that had gathered around them began to applaud. Slowly at first, but building to a thunderous ovation that echoed throughout the exhibition hall. Many of the same business professionals who had dismissed Owen earlier now watched in amazement as they witnessed the power of genuine vision and determination triumphing over cynicism and closed-mindedness. Several people were visibly emotional as they realized they had just seen something extraordinary, a reminder of why many of them had entered business in the first place. As the applause continued, Gabrielle stood and helped Owen carefully pack his drawings back into his red briefcase, treating each paper with the respect due to architectural plans worth millions of dollars. "We'll need to make copies of all of these," she told him seriously, her tone making it clear that she was treating him as a genuine business partner rather than a child to be humored. "My team of architects and engineers will want to study every detail of your design so we can build it exactly as you've envisioned it. This briefcase contains some of the most important documents in my company's history." The transformation in how Owen was perceived by the convention attendees was immediate and dramatic. People who had laughed at his toy briefcase now approached respectfully, asking for selfies and expressing their admiration for his project. Business cards were thrust into Mira's hands by entrepreneurs who wanted to be associated with the story that was already being shared across social media platforms around the world. Word of Owen's successful presentation spread rapidly through the exhibition hall via social media and text messages, creating a buzz that overshadowed many of the high-tech demonstrations and million-dollar deals being announced elsewhere in the building. The story of the 6-year-old boy with a toy briefcase who had secured funding for his community playground from one of the world's most successful CEOs captured the imagination of everyone present, serving as a powerful reminder that innovation and determination could come from the most unexpected sources. Local news stations, alerted by the viral social media posts, began arriving at the convention center with camera crews, eager to capture interviews with Owen and Gabrielle about the remarkable partnership that had just been forged. The story had all the elements that made for compelling television, combining human interest with business success and the kind of feel-good ending that viewers craved in an often cynical world. As they prepared to leave the convention center, Gabrielle knelt down to Owen's level one more time, her expression serious as she looked into his eyes. "I want you to understand something very important," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of years of business experience and hard-won wisdom. "What happened here today didn't happen because you got lucky or because I felt sorry for you. It happened because you had a genuine solution to a real problem, and you presented it with passion and thoroughness that impressed me more than most professional presentations I see." She paused, making sure he was listening carefully to her words. "You're going to encounter a lot of people in your life who will try to tell you that you're too young or too small or too different to make a difference in the world. What I want you to remember is that those people are wrong. Age doesn't determine the value of an idea, and passion combined with preparation can overcome almost any obstacle. Never let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big or too important for someone your age to pursue." Owen nodded solemnly, understanding that he was receiving advice that would shape the rest of his life. The lesson about perseverance and believing in himself despite the skepticism of others was one that would serve him well in all his future endeavors, both personal and professional. Over the following weeks, Owen became a regular presence at Shaw Enterprises headquarters, a gleaming 50-story tower in the heart of the business district that represented everything he and Priya had dreamed about when they talked about creating beautiful buildings that served communities. The company's top architects and engineers, initially skeptical about working with a 6-year-old consultant, quickly discovered that Owen's insights and suggestions were genuinely valuable contributions to the project. His questions challenged them to think differently about accessibility and community needs, pushing them to create solutions they might never have considered on their own. When Owen asked why the swing sets couldn't be designed to accommodate children who couldn't grip traditional chains, the engineering team developed innovative harness systems that opened up new possibilities for inclusive play equipment. The professional team was amazed by Owen's ability to envision how different children would interact with various playground elements. His perspective, informed by countless hours of observation, and his sister's teachings about universal design principles. His suggestions led to modifications that improved the playground's functionality for all users, not just those with specific accessibility needs. The translation of Owen's childhood drawings into professional construction plans became a collaborative process that honored both his original vision and the technical requirements of modern playground safety standards. Every decision was made with Owen's input, ensuring that the final design maintained the spirit of inclusion and community service that had motivated the project from the beginning. The construction of the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground began 6 months after that fateful day at the Business Expo, with Owen present for the groundbreaking ceremony wearing a custom-made hard hat decorated with drawings of playground equipment. The local news covered the story extensively, fascinated by the tale of how a child's determination and vision had captured the attention of one of the business world's most powerful figures. The ceremony drew hundreds of community members who had followed the project's progress through local media coverage and social media updates. Many of them had initially been skeptical that such an ambitious project would actually be completed in their neighborhood. Having experienced years of broken promises from politicians and developers who had made grand announcements but failed to follow through with action. But as the construction crews began working on the site, clearing away the debris and broken glass that had made the lot dangerous for children, the community's excitement grew. Parents who had worried about their children's safety began to envision a future where their kids could play close to home without the risks that had characterized the empty lot for so many years. The construction process itself became a source of education and pride for the neighborhood, with Owen serving as an unofficial ambassador between the construction crews and the community. He explained the playground's features to curious neighbors and helped the workers understand how the space would be used by local families, bridging the gap between the technical aspects of construction and the human needs the project was designed to address. As the playground took shape over the following months, it became clear that Owen's design was something truly special. The inclusive play structures accommodated children of all abilities while creating opportunities for collaborative and imaginative play that brought the community together in ways the old empty lot never could have. The natural landscaping integrated seamlessly with the play equipment, creating a beautiful green space that served as both a playground and a community garden where families could grow vegetables and flowers together. The playground's design incorporated sustainable features that reflected Shaw Enterprises' commitment to environmental responsibility, including solar-powered lighting, rainwater collection systems, and native plant landscaping that required minimal maintenance while providing habitat for local wildlife. These elements served as educational opportunities for children to learn about environmental stewardship while they played. The attention to detail in the construction process amazed everyone involved. From the specialized rubber surfacing that provided safety without sacrificing accessibility to the custom-designed play structures that had never been built anywhere else in the world. Every element reflected the collaboration between Owen's vision and the technical expertise of Shaw Enterprises' professional team. Local schools began incorporating the playground's construction into their curriculum, with teachers bringing students to observe the building process and learn about architecture, engineering, and community development. Owen became a frequent guest speaker at these educational visits, sharing his story and encouraging other children to pursue their own dreams regardless of their age or circumstances. The playground's construction also sparked broader conversations about community development and inclusive design throughout the city. Other neighborhoods began advocating for similar projects, inspired by the example of what could be accomplished when community needs were prioritized and adequate resources were committed to addressing them. Urban planning students from nearby universities conducted case studies on the playground project, examining how community input had been integrated into the design process and analyzing the broader implications for neighborhood development. Owen's approach to identifying and documenting community needs became a model for participatory design processes that put residents at the center of planning decisions. The grand opening of the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground drew hundreds of community members, local officials, and media representatives who came to witness the realization of one child's remarkable, vision. The event was scheduled for a sunny Saturday morning in late spring, when the weather would be perfect for the first children to experience the playground that had been built specifically for them. Owen, now 7 years old and dressed in his best suit, stood beside Gabrielle Shaw as they prepared to cut the ribbon that would officially open the playground to the public. In his hand, he held the same red briefcase that had carried his dreams into the business expo more than a year earlier, now containing certificates and awards recognizing his contribution to community development. The playground itself exceeded even Owen's original vision, with colorful equipment that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight and landscaping that created natural gathering spaces for families to relax while their children played. Water features provided both aesthetic beauty and opportunities for sensory play, while shaded areas ensured that the space would be comfortable even during the hottest summer days. "Before we open this playground," Owen said into the microphone, his young voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd, "I want to tell everyone about my sister Priya. She taught me that architecture isn't just about building things. It's about building dreams and hope and places where people can be happy together. This playground is her dream as much as mine, and every time kids play here, they're making her dream come true." His words brought tears to many eyes in the audience, including Gabrielle's, as people were reminded of the love and loss that had motivated this extraordinary project. The dedication plaque that bore both Priya's and Owen's names would serve as a permanent reminder of the sister whose wisdom had shaped the playground's inclusive design and the brother whose determination had brought her vision to brawn life. As the ribbon fell and children rushed onto the playground equipment for the first time, their laughter and shouts of joy created a symphony that seemed to echo with approval from somewhere beyond the visible world. Owen watched from beside the dedication plaque, his eyes bright with tears of joy as he saw his vision transformed into reality. Exactly as he and Priya had imagined during those long hours in hospital rooms, sketching their shared vision of a better world. The first children to use the playground represented the diversity Owen had envisioned in his original drawings, including kids who used wheelchairs, children with hearing aids, and siblings of different ages who could finally play together safely in their own neighborhood. Parents who had worried for years about their children's safety now relaxed on comfortable benches while their kids explored equipment designed specifically to encourage inclusive play. Gabrielle Shaw stood beside Owen, her own eyes moist as she watched the community come together to celebrate what had begun as one child's impossible dream. The success of the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground had inspired Shaw Enterprises to launch a new division focused exclusively on community-centered development projects, with Owen serving as their permanent consultant on inclusive design principles. His influence had already begun to reshape how the company approached all of their projects, prioritizing community needs and accessibility in ways that honored Priya's vision of architecture that served everyone rather than just those with the resources to demand quality design. The playground had become more than just a place for children to play. It had become a model for how business success could be measured not just in profit margins, but in positive community impact. The media coverage of the playground's opening reached far beyond the local community, with national news outlets picking up the story of the 6-year-old who had convinced a billionaire CEO to fund his BOW community project. The story resonated with audiences around the world, inspiring other children to pursue their own ambitious dreams and reminding adults that innovation could come from the most unexpected sources. In the months that followed the playground's opening, Owen continued to work with Shaw Enterprises on similar projects in communities around the world. His approach to identifying community needs and developing inclusive solutions became a template for the company's community development initiatives, ensuring that Priya's wisdom would continue to influence architectural projects for years to come. The playground itself became a destination for families from throughout the metropolitan area, drawn by word-of-mouth recommendations and social media posts showcasing its innovative design and inclusive features. Urban planners and architects made pilgrimages to study the playground's approach to accessibility and community integration, seeking to understand how similar principles could be applied to other development projects. Years later, as Owen grew older and eventually pursued his own career in architecture, he would often return to the playground that had started it all. Watching new generations of children discover the joy of inclusive play in the space he and Priya had dreamed into existence. The playground had become more than just a memorial to his sister. It had become a living testament to what was possible when vision, determination, and compassion came together to create something beautiful and lasting. The impact of that single day at the Business Expo rippled outward in ways that none of them could have anticipated. Inspiring other children to pursue their own impossible dreams and reminding adults throughout the business world, but the most powerful innovations often came not from boardrooms and focus groups, but from the pure hearts and clear vision of those who saw problems that needed solving and refused to accept that nothing could be done. The red briefcase that had once been dismissed as a toy was eventually displayed in Shaw Enterprises' lobby, accompanied by a plaque explaining how it had carried the plans that transformed not just one empty lot, but the entire company's approach to community development. Visitors to the building often stopped to read the story, many of them leaving with renewed faith in the power of determination and the importance of listening to voices that might otherwise be dismissed. The laughter of children playing on the Priya and Owen Memorial Playground continued to echo through the neighborhood day after day, year after year, a testament to the power of a sister's love, a brother's determination, and the willingness of one successful woman to listen when everyone else had chosen to laugh. In the end, the briefcase had been anything but a toy. It had been the vehicle that carried a dream from the realm of Ken, imagination into the solid reality of steel and wood and rubber surfaces where children's feet could run and jump and play in safety, exactly as Priya and Owen had always known it should be.